I don't think I was particularly attractive back then either, with my shaven head and my 3-inch.
So, Rob, this is podcast number 2 on the bounce. It's the first time we've done 2 in a row. But my idea for this episode was to talk about dating approaches. I don't even know where it came, but I just had this idea of hearing the viewpoint from an engaged man with no chat to a single man without, a single man with loads of chat. So before I'm making a huge assumption here. So do you think you have good chat?
I'd like to think I do, for the sole reason. Let me first off say a disclaimer. I'm not a dating guru. I'm not a dating expert. I'm just not. I'm just a guy, just a regular guy. But after my divorce, the dates I went on in between, which were terrifying, because this new weird reality that I had to enter that I didn't think I would have to enter. And you have to learn how to date again. And the dating game had very, very much changed, which we'll talk about. I then started thinking, right, how do you date? What is good chat? What do I do? Do I just sit asking them questions? Do I try and make them laugh? Do I just talk about me? And obviously that is not the case at all. And I don't know, I guess through being a PT and forcing myself to be a bit more extroverted and having done so many things in my life where I've had to tell stories, it just kind of came together. And I think every date I've had, especially on the first date, I don't think there's ever been any awkward silences. I don't think there's been any moments where I said the wrong thing. They've always been relaxed. They've always been fun. They've always got a kiss at the end of it. So that's a successful first date, in which case that must mean I'm pretty decent on the first date. Just not over the long term. I'm all right on the first date.
That's an interesting question. It is really like training, isn't it? Like if you don't use it, you lose it. Like if I went into it, well, now I wouldn't know where to begin.
Yeah. It's there's a long list, and again, any females that do listen to this, feel free to comment and tell us exactly how horrific it is for you. But I hear stories from girls as well that guys don't know how to talk to women. And the problem is, because if you're not doing it as a habit and a skill yourself, you're seeing what happens on TV. And that's not a fucking good. I used to say, if you want to know how to date or how to be successful in a relationship, you do the complete opposite of everything you see in Friends, Big Bang Theory, whatever the hell it was called, the one in New York where they're all, I don't know, I can't remember the name of these things. Mike's used to watch it. I thought it was terrible. How I Met Your Mother. You do the opposite of all what these guys do, and you're probably going to be pretty good on the dating field or good in a long-term relationship. And those are some of the biggest representations of single men and single women as well. Doesn't paint a pretty picture either.
From what I remember from out dating as well, and you brought this up when you talked about using your success on first dates as an indicator of good chat. It's also a different skill set. It's like saving money in your savings account to investing. Is the skill set I'd need to have a good first date is totally different from the skill set I'd need to get the girl on the first date itself. And I remember Ellie saying this to me, because she's a wonderful sweet talker, wife to be, that she said to me once, it's like, I wasn't sure if I'd like you when we went on our first date because I thought you had shit chat over text. And then she came on the first date, had a really good first date, went on the date with someone she thought had better chat over text, and then preferred me. And I'm like, how different? Like, how am I so good on a date, but so unbelievably terrible in a club or over text or on a dating site?
But this is what it comes down to. And this works both ways. That person who's got great chat in text, there's a safety net. They're behind the keyboard. You can't see them. They can be putting on a performance, all sorts of stuff. And then when it comes to, right, they're actually out on the date, one of my favorite sayings is, you can't bullshit when your dick is out. Suddenly the truth is there, you're exposed. But at the same time, you could say the same thing, that maybe, I'm not saying this is the case, but when you're on the date and there's that pressure there, maybe you put on a better performance. I don't know. How can we ever really, this is the problem with the modern dating world. You don't know who's being real when. You have no idea.
I think the reason why I'm good on a first date is also the reason why I'm not terrible at podcasting. Because if you ask me to have a conversation with someone, I'm fine. But when you ask me to flirt, what's the right level of sexual escalation? What's the less level of sexual escalation? How do you start a conversation where there is nothing wrong with small talk in a conversation, but you've got to come up with something that pattern breaks? I don't need a pattern break in this show.
No.
And you don't need a pattern break on a date. So it's a totally different skill set. It's communication that's not normal communication. It's a different set of rules, I think.
It's a different type of persuasion as well. Like if you were to think about the type of conversation you'd need to have to get a job or to make a sale or to make a friend or to just try and get someone round to your way of thinking, none of those things concern sexual escalation. And even though you might not be having sex on a first date, there has to be some sort of sexual attraction there for it to have been a successful first date. If there's zero sexual attraction, chances of you getting a second date are insanely lower. So you have to do something to ramp up sexual attraction. There's no other realm where you have to do that. You can influence, you can persuade, you can coerce, you can manipulate in all sorts of areas of life, but only one of them has to consider sexual escalation in there at the same time.
I'm going to bring up the controversial question I had for later in the show now. So this is going to hook people in. Because when you talk about sex escalation, I do think this segues into it too well. But how do you think things like the Me Too movement and the not all men things has affected dating both positively and negatively? Obviously, these things are on the whole positive. None of us want to see women feel unsafe or scared or men being aggressive in any way. But how do I know now there's a smaller line by what's considered creepy? It's far less than it used to be. Because when you're chatting to somebody, at some point you have to escalate, right? And by law of averages, some men will get turned down. So some men will think it's on, escalate, get turned down. 10, 20 years ago, like, I wasn't interested in him, and you'd walk off and that'd be the end of it. Whereas now, these people, one, that could be considered backlash, and two, there could be guys now that maybe want to escalate and don't now because they're worried that they might get backlash if the girl's not interested. So, yeah, like, what do you think? Do you think this has changed, this modern point has changed dating and maybe made men more scared?
It's a legitimate concern. There's studies being done on this. There are this incel community of guys that are voluntarily becoming celibate, leaving the dating market or the sexual marketplace is huge. And a lot of it is from, okay, we're going to talk about this anyway. A lot of it is from they're not really rated in the sexual market at all. Their value is so low that they're not getting any attraction. On the other side, it's guys that are too scared to do anything. So there'll be guys who have no idea how to sexually escalate in a conversation without just saying something blatant like, let's have sex, or some dumbass macho joke that is not going to go down well, or just something that's just too crude. There are guys that just don't have that skill set, that tact, or that level of awareness in their conversation and what they're saying. But there will be guys that will be scared to because their internal monologue is going, if you say this, she's going to slap you. She's going to take a photo with you and put you on Facebook saying you verbally abused her or something like that. Don't want to use the R word, but this is what stupid people do as well. Like you have no idea what another person's reaction is going to be. But if you're on a date with that person, I'd say your chances of being able to do that innocently are a lot higher than if you just walk up to a random woman in the street and try chatting her up. If you're on the date, it's a safer place to do so. And people are forgetting that. Granted, not everyone wants to go up to someone that they've just seen from a distance and try to chat them up and get their number. That's fine. That's an entirely different skill set in itself. And that is terrifying for most men. But if they're on the date, it's a little bit more fair game. Because you want to come across as fun. You don't want to come across as a complete mummy's boy, teetotal, innocent angel. Like the whole point of a relationship, if you're on the first date, okay, let's not put too much pressure on it. But if you're on the first date, that is the first step in whether that's going to blossom into a beautiful relationship or not. Regardless, you can't have that relationship without the first date, whatever way, shape, or form that first date takes. So we don't want to put too much pressure on it, of course. But for a relationship to blossom, there has to be a sexual element to it. So at some point, if that dating is going to continue, at some point you're going to have sex. So you'd better get over being scared, talking about it, or suggesting about it, or even thinking about it, or doing it. It's like fear has no place in that realm. You have to. That's one guard you have to drop, and that's one area you have to drop it in. Otherwise, oh man, we could talk about this till the cows come home. But she could walk off going, he didn't even like mention any sort of. I'm not saying she's consciously thinking this, but if there was zero escalation whatsoever, she might walk away thinking he's not interested. Then not interested because he didn't try and go for the kiss. There was no flirty jokes. There was nothing like that. In which case, you just shot yourself in the foot. I would rather say too much, say the wrong thing, than regret later going, I should have said this or I should have said that.
I had a conversation the other day about would a lot of these issues go away in dating in terms of fear, in terms of people thinking things are a bit too much or creepy, if we took away the stereotypes of men speak to women first. Because men have to then go and do that. They're building it up in their head. I was speaking to a mate about this who spent the last 8 months in Thailand, where women, some of them not all completely women, but women will go up to men as much as the other way around. And
really?
they felt it was a breath of fresh air because they didn't like these guys are good with girls. They have no problem chatting girls up, but it was no pressure. There was no expectation of way to be. If people liked you, they come over, they buy you a drink, they have a conversation. And it was quite relaxed. Whereas now, how many like girls do you see that potentially say, I get no good guys coming up to me? But it's because those good guys maybe are thinking of trying to be nice, either don't come up because they're scared, or they do and you're not interested because they don't sexually escalate. The people that are more likely to sexually escalate are probably the men who've done that the most often. And are those potentially those men likely to be the ones that are maybe more troublesome? Maybe. And I also think there's a level of what's deemed as inappropriate. I'm not condoning any inappropriate behavior whatsoever. But I had a conversation with Ellie on a date night the other week where what was her take on hand? And we differed of opinion. What's your take on hands on the lower back? She was like, absolutely not, never. That's always creepy. Like if you don't need to be handed on the lower back, you could put a hand on the shoulder, you could put a hand on the upper back. I'm like, yes. But maybe if you're sitting there lingering, that's a different story. But if I'm walking through a busy club, right, is it weirder for me to just hand on the lower back, just ease people past as I walk through, or have to go like a breaststroke to try and make sure that I don't do anything below the shoulder? You know, and if that's now the barrier to somebody being inappropriate, this is a really hard realm for like, where do men go? Like, where do I start? What's creepy, what's not?
It's this is the problem. The definition of creepy is not necessarily the action, it's the person doing it. Really, that's the problem. I'm not saying this about aliens in the slightest, but would someone prefer the hand on the lower back coming from, I don't even know who's considered creepy now. Jesus. How many girls would prefer, I don't know, Harry Styles? How many girls would say, it's creepy, Harry Styles put his hand on my lower back? Probably not a lot. Probably not a lot. I prefer him to say a much more manly, masculine, but they won't.
Channing Tatum. That's her favourite. We'll go with that one.
Channing Tatum, yeah? Okay, so Channing Tatum or, God, Prince Andrew.
It's actually
so creepy.
For anyone that doesn't understand the joke, we just recorded our tribute to the Queen and Prince Andrew came up.
Prince Andrew always comes up.
He doesn't sweat. So that's one creepy thing he doesn't do.
Doesn't sweat. So at least he's creepy, but he wouldn't be sweating on you.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
So, it's just too far. It's just a step too far.
There you go.
I mean, he'd probably chat you up in a Pizza Express as well.
Now, okay, so we also need to talk about first dates. Where's a good place to take?
Well, before we go on to that, I want to make one point on this.
Oh, yeah. That's a minor thing.
Do you think the majority of men in clubs are creepy? Because I get two arguments. Whenever you speak to girls, quite often they say there are so many guys that are creepy and they're all over the place in these clubs. So every night I'm always worried about this. If that's the case, I feel really bad for that, but people don't feel safe. It's a genuine concern.
Yeah.
But when I don't think guys,
90% of guys are going to clubs. But
I
carry on,
also,
sorry. Yeah, go on.
I also think when you speak to guys, most of them would say, I've rarely ever met a single man that's creepy in a club. And I know we have a different side of the story of this, but I've never met a guy in a club that's like that. I've seen a couple of them when I was working the door, but like, I wouldn't have gone and said it was a majority. It's the loudest verbal minority rather than the majority. But what's your take on this?
Again, what's the creepy behavior? Is it overly staring? Is it they won't leave you alone? Is it... I remember I was probably 17, 18. This girl I saw, I was following around, I bought her drinks, all sorts. I was trying to get her on the dance floor, even though I can't dance, just chatting to her. She just kept saying, no, not interested, I'm a lesbian. It's like, no, of course she's not, she can't be lesbian. And that stupid, 1990s, 18-year-old view of, I could change her, I could turn her. But was I coming across it? I mean, she never told me to F off, never got anyone to get rid of me or anything. I was just being a drunk moron. Was that creepy? I don't know. I don't think I was particularly attractive back then either, with my shaven head and my 3-inch long goatee / I looked pretty good.
I want to try and cut that clip at the end of 3-inch long with my 3-inch long stop clip.
My 3-inch long. So I don't know. I'm certain it's not the behavior, it's the person doing it. I'm certain that's what it comes down to, which is a little bit of a double standard, but it's fair as well. Why would you want someone you're not attracted to in the slightest putting their hand on you? I wholeheartedly agree with that. Wholeheartedly agree. There's adverts on the tube now that staring is sexual assault. And it's not. It's not, but in a way it also is. It's the creepy guy staring for how long and where he's staring at as well. So the girl I'm seeing at the moment told me the other day she walked to a restaurant and she looked at the menu outside, deciding if she should go in or not. And a guy sat outside is staring right at her boobs. And she comes, you can see them, they're big. So she comes up, she's reading the menu, and he's still sat there, right there, just staring at him. She looks down at him and he's still staring. That's creepy, right? That's creepy. I think even a hot guy, even Channing Tatum doing that, that's pretty creepy because it's such a low standard behavior. Because obviously there's a lot more to that woman than just her chest. So just staring at her, it's pretty much like that, isn't it? It's like a silent wolf whistle. And the same thing on the tube. People get bored on the tube. There's nothing to do down there. There's no Wi-Fi. They can't look at their phone, even though everyone's scrolling through their camera roll for some reason. So you look around at people, and okay, your glance kind of stays there. Again, what's staring? There's a thing where people will look at you and they'll catch eye contact with you. One of you is going to look away, if not both of you look away. But if one person keeps staring, so what I tried doing, and this was a bit of a confidence builder for me back in the day as well, was to not look away. When they look away. I keep looking. Especially if it was an attractive girl, I keep looking. And if they look back, I'm still looking, but I smile. So I'm not just staring creepily at them. I smile. They smile back, cool. If they look scared, I fucking look away. Simple as that. But how many guys will just be that staring dead at you? Because they've not got that internal, the NPCs, they've not got that internal monologue going, you're creeping that girl out. Stop staring, bruv. And I think that's the problem with these clubs. I'm going to insult a large portion of the population, but the top quality guys don't go to clubs. The ones who are waiting for... I mean, what guy goes to a club? Come on, what guy goes to a club? Really?
Well, I think good guys go to a club, but they're probably between the age of 18 and 25.
They'll go to a very specific type of club, and they've probably booked out a certain area, and they're the ones with a bit more money that are not just going there to pick up whatever poor drunk girl is in the worst state by the end of it, because that's the only way they could get someone, which is horrific to say. But sadly, it's what goes on. That's what a lot of guys think. They're not going to go on apps because they'll get exposed. They're not going to ask girls out sober because they'll get exposed. But a few drinks down the poor girl and a few drinks down them, so they're a bit more social lubricant. They're a bit more confident. They could talk a little bit looser. You know, a lot of stuff. You see people hanging out at the clubs. You know, a lot of this stuff can kind of go on. But again, I think that creeping, it comes back to the Me Too thing as well. Really has affected the dating market because now guys aren't sure if they're the creepy one. Because the behavior is the thing that's being put out there rather than it's actually the guy doing it. is the thing or not, you know?
And I also think it goes back to what we were talking about in the controversy episode in as well, that the tamest, most extreme arguments of sexual harassment, which aren't actually that bad, is the stuff we will probably see in our echo chambers on social media. But we won't see, we see the two sides of it. We see the rape, and we see that person said darling, and he's now getting fired from his job, because both of those are newsworthy. Right?
Yeah.
Rather than the majority in this, which is like, there is this line where, okay, you are going a bit too far without it being criminal and without it being, you know, and that's the thing. So we either look at this as an opinion of, oh, it's not that bad, it's getting, you know, the lines are getting blurred, or we look at this as, oh, this is getting terrible. And in reality, has it actually changed that much?
Yeah. It's certainly, in terms of the Me Too, has helped women realize that they shouldn't lower their standards, that they shouldn't settle, that they should go for the best quality guy they should do. And that's absolutely fine. And that's kind of wired into your DNA. That's your inherent nature, to go for the best quality you can, because that's the one that's going to provide, protect, reproduce high quality children that are going to go on to carry on the line. So that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem is, a lot of people disagree with that, and they think there is something wrong with that. But you can't, this is like, what, how many hundreds of thousands of years of DNA wiring, really, that could be seen across all species. Forgot my point. But the Me Too movement has helped highlight that you shouldn't be settling for these creepy guys. You can push yourself a little bit further. You don't have to rely on a man, but it's fucked up in two areas as well. You've got women now putting their career over any sort of relationship, and they're getting further and further up the age bracket, getting closer to when that biological clock's just going to go. Ugh. And then what have you got? You got a career, cool, probably not what you're happiest with anymore. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got the girls that now just place men so low down that any behavior whatsoever is unacceptable, and all men should change. And but then you can't please everyone. You've got, I could hold a door open for a woman, and it's a perfectly gentlemanly act, and some women would say thank you, some women would just walk through like it's nothing, and some women would, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Some women would get angry that I'm holding a door open for them like they can't open it themselves. You know, you can't fucking please everyone. Everyone's so fucking different. And this is the problem with the dating market, is everyone is different. Yeah. Everyone's looking for similar things, but there's too many different people there. There's too many different people. Like, I saw a shocking statistic. I've got a ton of statistics. I saw a shocking statistic that on Tinder in the UK, 85% of users are men. So that means 15% of Tinder users are female. Now, okay, I don't know the if you go into the straight or homosexual sections, I don't know. Obviously, there might be a large percentage of men, obviously, but I don't know. I don't have that information. 85%. Okay, so in terms of everyone's looking for a certain type of thing, women have been taught to raise their standards, which means there's going to be a large percentage of men that don't reach that standard. And let's say 85% is accurate across the whole dating market. Just as an argument, just as a thought experiment, let's say 85% of men are there looking to date, and 15% of women are not going to be looking for those guys. In which case, you're just going to hit the brick wall in the type of, everyone wants to date the best person that they can. Everyone wants to date that top 20%, but it's almost like a Pareto principle thing going on. The top 20% have control of 80% of the dating market. It's not the other way around. The top 20% can date who they want. They're probably not on the apps because they probably get asked out all the time. They've got no shortage of people, and they can, and it's up to them whether they settle down or not. They don't have to settle down. Just because they're dating the 80% doesn't mean that the first person they meet is the one they settle down with. They may go through a few because they've got that abundance mentality. They've got more options. It's terrifying when you think about it, that they're now in a position where they want to raise their standards, which is absolutely fine. But the lower standard of men available out there means their choices are less and less and less. And so they're aiming for this top 20% of men, they may not meet that top 20% of men's standards. In which case, there's a lot of lonely people coming up. We're going to see more incels. We're going to see way, way more male incels over the next decades, I think, which I think will also lead to an increase in male violence. And I think we're going to see a lot more 35 plus, if not 30, 35 plus women on antidepressants. A lot more.
I
Because
think I
of
agree with you.
dating market being a nightmare.
Do you
Terrifying.
think that's why there's the incel community has come about? Because of discrepancies like this in dating apps, and because these men maybe don't know how to interact with people off an app. So when they don't meet those standards out online, they haven't really got the skills to change that in person. So they end up feeling a little bit lost.
Yeah, exactly. There was always the weird kid at school who girls would not go near. Of course there was. And again, this goes back to, you can say that's horrible, you can say that's bullying, but there's a bit of wiring in our DNA where we judge other people based on, are we likely to start a relationship? Am I safe with them? Are they a trustworthy member of the tribe, or should we exile them? All these things are like on a base level. That's where this all coming from. So the weird kid at school was probably not going to get any female attention. Probably found solace in computer games, maybe dark music as well. Obviously, 90s, the metal kids in the 90s were not the cool kids that they are now. Like Stranger Things, playing Metallica and stuff like that. That was not happening back in the 90s. Metallica
Certainly wasn't. I was not cool.
Mainstream TV shows and things like that, so that wasn't happening. The weird kids were isolated. We saw how this can kind of come about with Columbine and things like that. So these kids are isolated. They find solace in computer games, in music. These are where they're getting their dopamine hits, and this is where they can kind of feel like a winner for a little bit. That computer game allows them to level up, to upgrade, to win, to be able to do stuff that they're not able to do in real life, which doesn't build a social skill. That's the problem. And that the longer they're stuck in that cycle, the more that cycle perpetuates. Some find a female, but that may not be the one they want to be with. It may be the one they just kind of settle with. And that goes for the female as well, in terms of the male that they're getting with. It goes both ways, of course. So I think this stuff's always been around, but now this incel community is more doing it out of choice rather than default. Like they're choosing to, like there's the MGTOW movement, MGTOW, men going their own way, actively stepping out of the dating market, don't need a female, I'm going to become the best. You see these guys, these are the 20-year-old masculinity coaches you see on TikTok now. Don't need a woman, I can just have sex whenever I want. But there's a large percentage of them that are not choosing to have sex either. They're just going to the gym, trying to build a business, reading way too much into Jordan Peterson than they probably should, which is how some of this misinformation comes about. And they're very high in testosterone, which can increase aggression and crime, can do. And they're confused and they're lonely, which causes all sorts of issues and can make you act ways that you wouldn't normally act. And this is where a lot of this violence is coming from, because it has to be let out in some way, shape, or form. This testosterone buildup has to be let out. But that's the ones who are more likely to be aggressively violent from their testosterone. The ones who are hiding in the basement, playing the computer games, not eating very well, not looking after themselves, not seeing sunlight, well, they're not high in testosterone. So this is coming out of stress, frustration, and some other type of mental illness. Something's not going on there with the neurotransmitters, in which case their response is violence as well. This is why I think we're going to see a lot more violence, a lot more solo shooters. But if they're becoming more of a community, it's even more terrifying.
Do you think like the push to digital, whether it's in dating, like is dating now totally online, but in general, so much stuff now has been moving remote. So we're going to see people more like catfishing. We're going to see these people trying to be someone they're not. But do you think if you took a Gen Z, Gen X person now and put them in a nightclub, like we probably went and spoke to girls in bars and clubs when we were in our early 20s, granted, I didn't do it very well either, but if you put them in those environments, would they know how to interact at all anymore when there isn't a swipe?
Not so. There would be a large amount, like the old school discos, there'd be a large amount in the back corner, hiding in the dark, on their phones, if we still have their phones, we let them keep their phones, they're going to be on their phones looking at stuff. There might be a few that are like just seeing that overabundance of women and wanting to do something. But again, if they've not got the skills to do so, or if they're not of that attractiveness scale, let's say, that female is looking for, they're not going to get any attention either. Like in the clubs, I first started talking to girls, not from a place of confidence, but from a place of, I've come to a club, I'm not getting a girlfriend out of it. I really want to get a girlfriend. So I have to talk to girls. So let's go talk to girls. And of course, you're going to be terrible when you start. Of course you are. Same as anything. No one's going to be able to do that. Okay, you could say some people naturally have a gift of the gab and some people are naturally confident. Yeah, but that's how they've been brought up. That's their environment. That's potentially some of their DNA as well. But it's certainly not the majority of people. So I think if we shove them in that environment, we'd see a lot of people go straight out the fire exit. We'd see hubs on their phone looking at their NFTs or whatever they look at. And then there'll be the ones that are just like, I really want to be the guy that goes home with a girl, that gets a girlfriend out of this. And we'll try to. Some will be successful, some won't be successful.
Do you think, you were saying earlier on that the top 20% of guys and girls will basically be the ones that clean up. And while I generally agree with you for guys, the guys are the top 20%. And when I say top 20%, I mean they look good and they've got chat.
Yeah.
Is it the case for girls? Because we've said here that we've now allowed women with raising their standards. We now have more Disney than ever before, teaching people to find their Prince Charming and looking for love at first sight. And now we have a world of men that are probably more than ever more scared to talk to these women. So do you think that the top 20% of the women that's actually sitting in the bar being the best looking woman, but everyone's too scared to talk to her, and then there's the 30-40% underneath her that are perfectly good looking, but maybe not quite in that top 10%, that are probably getting much better results because they're not quite as intimidating?
It's exactly that. It's the top 20% of men can control 80% of the dating market, 80% of those females.
So is there an argument, just sorry to cut you off, was there an argument then for the guy, is there an argument for a guy that maybe struggle, this example guy that's wanting to go home with a girlfriend but doesn't know how to do it, rather than being scared of the best looking woman in the club, going straight over to her because she's probably been chatted up less than the people below her?
This is your in. This is your loophole. This is how you get in. Not you, but this is how you do it. This is how
I get in a lot of trouble.
This is how you do it. This is the thing. There will be a larger percent of guys that are scared to talk to her. And even those top 10% of men, top 20% of men, it's top 20% of looks, attractiveness, prospects, financial, all this sort of stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are the best at chatting either. They could probably get a high rate of matches on Tinder if they're on Tinder, just from how they look and just that little write-up in their bio of their accomplishments and their achievements, things like that. So a lot of these girls aren't being spoken to. But there's two things going on. They aren't being spoken to. So the lower tier guys, that is your in. That is your, just go talk to them. There's nothing wrong with trying to start a conversation with another person. Nothing wrong. As long as you don't just walk up to them and say something crude or stupid or just try and get them into bed. Just have a conversation. Simple. But it doesn't mean that we'll replicate and continue that conversation with you, unfortunately, based on how you look, your opening line, whatever the hell, all these different things. So it is your in, it is your loophole, but at the same time, it could rapidly backfire on you at the same time. But at the same time, if I don't want to say get our defenses down, if you become more likable and trustworthy through your conversation and coming across as a normal, nice guy, you're much more likely to get the date out of her. But if she's disappointed because the 80% of females are looking to date the top 20% of men, the numbers don't match at all. So in terms of the men who are actively dated, and again, that top 20% of men doesn't mean they're single, and you've got 80% of women looking to date that top 20% of men, the numbers don't add up. So again, we're going to see a lot of lonely guys and a lot of lonely females as well. So then it comes down to, okay, what is this top 20%? Okay, we've said attractiveness, their prospects, terms of how they're built, terms of how they look, terms of how they talk, health, all these different things. There was something I was going to talk about last week that I saw on the Rogan thing, which I thought was really interesting. We'll talk about that in a second.
With attractiveness, with it being subjective, we're not necessarily looking for attractiveness, we're looking for more high status. So would somebody because someone could not find a certain person attractive, but on average, do you reckon people who are in better shape tend to do better, regardless whether they are more attractive subjectively or not, because they've shown that they can put the work in for the long term. This is things that dating coaching, these are things that Jordan Peterson, these are things that people talk all the time. Do you think people subconsciously look at these long-term things? Because we all talk about this is better for like looking after offspring and all this sort of thing. And I think, are you reading too much into this? Because I never went to a club and went, man, she looks like she'd be the mother of my children in 30 years. Like, and never once. But if you listen to the date market, you listen to what these incels are looking at, it's all biologically evolutionary. You know, is there a point to this? Or do you think
I mean, obviously, all that stuff almost happens subconsciously. There's not a little voice in your head that goes, well, actually, your DNA says you're not going to match with this one because of this chromosome and this one and this one. There's what's happening based on your DNA, based on your survival and your need to breed. There's what's happening based on what you've been programmed to find attractive, really, by your peer group, by your parents, by TV, by media. There's a lot of programming on what you end up finding attractive. And again, that it is more of a status than just pure attractiveness. Because if it wasn't status, if it was just status and not attractiveness at all, then Bill Gates would have women knocking his door down every single day. And that is obviously not the case. I can't imagine many, if any, women rating Bill Gates as the most attractive man on the planet for multiple reasons that go beyond his wallet, right? And we've seen that with his physique and his ability to talk to people. And it's almost the same with Zuckerberg as well.
Musk.
Really doesn't talk like a normal person. Musk, none of these guys kind of do, and you would say they're the top status man, but they're also not at the same time, because it's so much more than just financial status. There's so many different elements to it.
The status isn't always financial. When we look at status, it is more than that. A guy in a suit is potentially high status. A guy who has wealth, a guy who has good values. Like, status could be all encompassing. It doesn't necessarily have to be financial.
And this is why it's important to try and project that image. Even if you are lying a little bit, even if you are putting on a bit of a performance, it's important to push that across if you're looking for a higher quality type of female. And we can argue, again, everyone can argue saying, no, it's shallow, it's superficial, that's not what we look for at all. Bullshit. It's exactly what you look for. There's so much research and statistics done on this stuff that if we know what is actually the case and what isn't the case.
If you ask girls,
like
if you ask girls, what's the difference between your male friend and your boyfriend?
Boom.
That's it.
That's exactly it.
You want to see him naked. You don't want to see your best mate naked. That's solely the difference.
100%. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And it's the same with a relationship where they don't have sex. Well, that's not a relationship. That's a roommate. That's now a roommate. You're just sleeping in the same bed. It's because you don't multiple reasons, but maybe you don't find them attractive anymore. It's a terrifying thing. Like, you're in a relationship, do what you can to make it work, to make it the best relationship you can. Because it's terrifying out there. It's actually quite terrifying.
So, helping people navigate the fear, before we go into where can people get dating advice, what is the single biggest, like the most impactful piece of dating advice you've ever been given?
Just make yourself the best version of you that you can be, that you want to be. And it doesn't mean you're going to magically attract the best person. But if you think of it, if you're then trying to become someone that someone else wants you to be, or you're just going through life kind of mediocre and not the best person you could be, and you're really frustrated by that, and then you meet someone, you're always going to have that frustration that you're not the best person you could be. Either of those relationships end, you're still that same chump. Whereas if you're the best version of the person you can be and you get in a relationship and it doesn't work, you're still the best version of that person you could be. So you don't get too many chinks in your armor from that as well. And obviously, the suicide statistics of divorce and relationships ending are huge because guys haven't built themselves up to be as capable as they can be. So you've got to focus on you first, because that's what's going to be the driver of your life. You have to be I'll be careful with this quote because it's such a big thing in the red pill community. You have to be the captain of your ship. And what you're looking for is a first mate, not someone to steer the ship for you. You have to be the captain of your ship first. Otherwise, ship goes down. So you have
I
to find
always look at that. I like that analogy, but I always look at it rather than a first mate. It's like looking at it as like if you're a fleet. Well, depending on how monogamous you are, depends on how many people are in your fleet. But
it's a lot of seamen.
Yeah, a lot of seamen all over the place. Right, it fills the Atlantic Ocean. But you want two boats to go side by side, and they're heading towards a similar direction.
Yes,
and I like the rather than first mate rather than have higher or lesser. But like, I certainly agree with that, and I know that firsthand. When I had my first relationship end in the first year at university, I was a mess, and I look back at that time now, like, what did I do to help me out? I probably wasn't attracted to the opposite sex. I wasn't looking after myself. I wasn't a good person to be around. Like, an alienated loads of my mates. And eventually, and it took me about a year to break out of that horrendous state that I got myself in. That's when I started taking the gym more seriously. That's when I started to look after myself, because I don't want to ever be in that position ever again. So when my second relationship ended, I dealt with it pretty quickly. And like, God forbid, touch wood, anything happens between me and Ellie, this is the best, obviously, I'm marrying this woman, the best relationship I've ever had by a country mile. But I also think it'd be the easiest one to get over. Not because I love her less, I love her much more. But because I'm in a better position now. I feel I can handle myself and take care of myself, which allows me to be a better partner now.
I agree. That's exactly it. It's the same with anything. Same with your job. Same with your job. Who your friends are. All this. If your focus is always on them, then you just put yourself in a place of weakness. You weaken yourself so much that when the bad stuff does happen, you are screwed potentially. If you've not been putting yourself first. That doesn't mean you can't take care of someone. It doesn't mean you can't be the best version for that person. It doesn't mean you have to abandon them or treat them like shit, but you have to put yourself first. And I say that with your kids as well. It has to be about you first. Have to do what's best for you, but that doesn't mean you have to become a shitty partner or a shitty parent to become the best version of yourself. And the more work you do on yourself when you're single, easier it is once you're in a relationship. It's harder when you're in a relationship.
And you know you're not going into that relationship because you feel like you need somebody.
Yes, you're not coming into it from a place of loneliness. You come into it to complement your life, to make your life even better, to enjoy that aspect of it, you know?
I think when it comes to the most impactful piece of dating advice, I think I actually have two, because I looked into this a lot when I was single, because I had a, as I said, I could be all right on a date, but I couldn't get to the date. I couldn't do this short, like, small talk and make it interesting. And I'll do it in like the second most impactful and the most impactful. The second most impactful piece of dating advice I had, they're both from a dating coach called Johnny Cassell, London's elite dating coach. You remember him, right? And I asked him to come on the show, actually, and I'm gonna nudge him again. But first thing he said was, like, every time, he makes a lot of money. Every time he went out, he got his haircut. Every single time. Now, well, that's silly. But the reason he did it is because he started chatting to the hairdresser. So he gets himself in the mood to talk to people who like to talk before the night out. And I looked at that and went, okay, when I'm at the hairdresser, I'm going to start chatting. Guy, girl, whatever. If I go into a lift, I'm going to say hello to the person in the lift and start a conversation. I'm now going to make a conversation in a very short time frame from the lift from my floor to ground floor. Now, easier in Hong Kong, 5 floors. But when I was single, it was probably 3 floors, right? Short time frame. I chat to taxi drivers. I chat to people on the streets. So then when a club came by, it wasn't a case of, oh my God, I can't talk to her. I was just used to being in the habit of talking to somebody. The second and probably most impactful piece of dating advice, I was very guilty of, oh my God, she's overwhelmingly attractive. I can't go and speak to her. I put her as this 10 out of 10 on a pedestal. And what he said, he went, a girl can only be 5 out of 10 from looks alone. The other 5 is made up from their personality, the interest, how interesting they are, all this other stuff that makes an interesting person. And this is something I bring up quite often when I talk about stuff in general, because I went to an event called the Waking Up Weekend with John Georgeson. I think you know John, right? And one of the deals we did in this, we talked about the reason why all brains have a process. So our process is the way we see the world, for all the things, all the senses, all the things that happen to us, all the experiences, all the trauma. And we then have actions based on those. So for sake of argument, one of the reasons why I didn't want to open up and speak to women is the first woman I have ever had a crush on, when I told her I fancied her, she laughed in my face, which probably affected me in my 20s, not wanting to go and do that again. Yeah. So my process, it was reinforced by, I didn't speak to women because I was scared of that. So I went into clubs, nervous, not speaking to women. And if I do, I'm showing my nerves and fear. So I had more nights out where I didn't have any luck, which reinforced this process, and this loop kept happening. Now, if you have this process and you're thinking now, okay, how do I change it? Because my process forms my actions. So how on earth do I change it if it's that way? Is you change your interpretation of that thing to allow you to get more positive reinforcement eventually than negative. So this is why I think a lot of dating coaches, when they do like weekend events, is like they just get people chatting to as many people as possible, because it makes pattern. For me, that should only be a 5 on looks alone was the thing that made me go, do you know what? I've gone from being scared because she's a 10 to I want to see if she makes the other 5. It changed it to the excitement. So I went up more because I was interested. I changed that viewpoint. So eventually I speak to more people, and over time, the wins become more than the losses. And then I started to lose that fear a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's that placing people on a pedestal, especially females on a pedestal based on attractiveness alone, so detrimental. Everybody poops. Don't care who they are. Everyone has to poop. Everyone gets ill. Everyone has some bad trait about them. So no one's a 10 out of 10. Of course they're not. And if you only ever place people on such a pedestal where you're nervous to talk to them, I don't think that then gives you the skill set to then talk to people that you're not attracted to. I think first you have to talk to people you're not attracted to, because you have to remember that it's just conversation. And if you don't build that skill set up, you'll never have that skill set to talk to the 10, even though she's not a 10. So that's what I try and do is, without flirting, just talk to everyone I can. I never used to. People are surprised when I say I'm introverted. I was so much worse than I am now. Yeah. I just kind of like my own company sometimes. That's all. I'm introverted now. But I do understand you can easily positively impact someone's day in one line. Something simple as that. So I try to talk because it increases my confidence as well. And that's only going to serve me with my clients, with trying to drum up business, with talking on podcasts, with talking on social media. It's only going to positively impact me. There's no negatives down to that whatsoever. And you will see, a let's call them a 5, a proper 5 out of 10. Yes, on the tube, for example, and everyone looks, but no one talks. No one talks. 5 will get in the lift. Everyone looks, but no one talks. 5's walking down the street, sat in the bar opposite you. Everyone looks, but no one talks. My God. But then they're not talking to, I don't want to say 1s and 2s, but 1s and 2s. They're not talking to the 1s and 2s either. So you're never going to build that skill set up. Never. You're never going to be confident exercising in the gym until you go to the gym and exercise. You can exercise at home. You can watch a million YouTube videos. But until you actually go to the gym, you're not going to be confident in the gym. And then it doesn't matter what exercise you're doing. You might hide in the corner doing push-ups. You might get to the bar and start chucking 60 kilos on and feel really, really judged that you've only got 60 kilos on the bar, even though no one cares. And then a couple of years down the line, you're pressing 100. I'm not pressing 100 yet, but a couple of years down the line, you're pressing 100 and you feel like a bit of a bigger shot in the gym. But there's always going to be someone doing more than you. Always. You're probably never going to be the strongest person in the gym. And if you are, maybe it's time to find a new gym. So until you build this skill set up, you're never going to be in a position where you go talk to that 10. You're always going to place her on a pedestal, which is a detrimental thing to do because it's just human. It's got the same flaws everyone else has. Still goes to the toilet, still throws up. You know, I've seen some incredibly hot girls that say they hate dogs. That for me is a non-negotiable. Non-negotiable.
I tell you what, one of the things that's made me think of another thing that helped this thing of the 5 is when you work as a promo guy helping people get into clubs in Birmingham Broad Street. I have seen girls I would consider a 10 at the time beat up a tramp. And I'm like, now I'm never going to assume anyone is on a pedestal because of looks ever again.
Never. And even then, in this day and age, filters, makeup, are they still a 10 when you roll over next to them the next morning? And the makeup's off and the filters,
True.
That's the other terrifying thing with the dating apps. It's most of the photos will be edited in some way, shape, or form. Most.
I like to think when I was on Plenty of Fish, I was pre-Tinder days. That's how old I am. I met Ellie on Plenty of Fish, so I never got to the Tinder stage. But the person I arranged a date with just before I started messaging Ellie, we were all getting on really well. We arranged a date, and then I was working at Risa, and I was texting away, and I thought things were going well. And she's like, "Oh, I'm at Pop World. Oh, I'm across the road in Risa." So I was like, "Oh, I'm going to come over and say hello in the smoking area." When she was there, and I was like, having a chat, and it's like I started chatting to her friend because she was too nervous to chat. I thought, well, that's probably a good sign. Cancel the date the next day. I'm like, hold on, am I the person whose photos online look better than reality? Son of a
bitch. Because I would say no one's gonna choose the worst picture they could ever put up. But I've seen some profiles where I'm like, how did you think that's the good photo to post? I don't know. Some people just have no idea on how to look slightly more attractive. I don't know.
Have you got a shirtless photo on your Tinder bio?
I did have a gym shot. And then I read an article saying, I saw that's a phenomenal book. Logan Ury, she was on Modern Wisdom. Phenomenal book with a bleak title. It's called To Not Die Alone. I saw a podcast of hers a while back before that book came out, and she used to work for Hinge. She was talking about the statistics of what photos do convert. And she said that the topless mirror selfies don't convert. So I took it down. And you would see, funnily enough, my top performing dating profile pic ever was me taking Alex Gates for a pendulum at UP, and I'm smiling at the camera while he's suffering. But that was the top performing one. It's like something weird's going on. I'm not involved in that weird thing, even though I'm pushing him through this weird thing. I thought it was quite a funny picture. Still one of my favorites. That was my top performing pick, believe it or not.
I always think would this topless photos work well 5 years ago, but everyone's now wise to it?
Again, it depends on the person, doesn't it? You can listen to whatever percentage of women say they prefer the dad bod, even though the definition of dad bod is very, very subjective. It's not what most overweight guys say it is.
Maybe Alden's a dad, just throwing that out there.
Alden's a dad. Daniel Craig, he was the actual definition of the dad bod, and it's someone clearly has a lot of muscle mass that just hasn't really got their abs out on display. That's all, which is not the majority of the male population. So you could look at the percentage of females that say they prefer dad bod, but you could also look at the percentage of females that say what body part they notice most on a guy and what they prefer most on a guy. And the areas they're looking for are not areas you would want to be overweight in, or lacking definition, or even skinny in.
So what are those for people listening to go, I want to get in the gym and improve these areas? What are those statistics saying?
I've got them. I hope it doesn't slow the connection down, but I've got them. Let me just get the stats up. It's terrible, man. And there we go. 11% of women admire a man's eyes. This isn't fuck all you can do there, right? 39% admire a man's butt. 13% are attracted to a flat stomach. Okay, cool. I've seen guys for a long time saying that the butt is the most attractive one for females. So you need to work on your glutes more. You need to work on your six pack and stuff like that. But when you're in clothing, flat stomach and butt can not really be shown off, really. So in another survey in GQ, 24% of women, which is fairly high, were attracted to a guy's well-toned arms. Not arms, well-toned arms. 19% attracted to broad shoulders. Broad. 18% to a sexy back, like JT. 15% to a guy's V cut. 9% to abs. And then 7% to a man's butt and 5% to legs. So what are we seeing? A larger proportion of that study looking for a muscular, V-shaped, broad-shouldered, toned arms physique. It's not a dad bod anymore, is it? And it's not really stuff you can hide in clothing. If you've got broad shoulders, that's going to show in clothing. If you've got well-defined arms, it's probably going to be hugging the t-shirt. You know?
It's interesting you say well-defined arms. There's a times in my life where I've had the most attention is when I'm leaner. Which, contrary to what a lot of women will say publicly, is I don't want a guy that's too lean because it's a standard I don't want to keep and all this sort of stuff. But when the rare occasion of my life when I've had women come up to me, it has been nearly always when I'm lean. And also that's probably the time when my arms are the smallest, but also the most toned, which I thought was a quite interesting thing that you said toned arms, not big arms.
Yes.
Because when arms become big, you're impressing dudes.
True. Very true. Very true. Yeah. if I think back to photos of me at my leanest with top off, those were the ones that got the most attention. This is why it kind of contradicts itself with a dating app, but those were the photos that got most attention on my social media, most likes, most heart emojis, most heart comments, things like that, from females that I wasn't necessarily involved with. And at the same time, ones where I was sat there with my dog got the same amount of attention as well. And there's obviously statistics to dog pics on social media as well. The problem with a lot of these surveys is some people are doing it not wanting to give their honest answer because they don't want to be judged. Even though it might be anonymous, it might not be anonymous. They don't necessarily always give the most honest answer that they can. So in terms of the Hinge statistics showed that these gym pictures weren't performing. So they've got statistics that those pictures aren't the ones that are being swiped on. It's not that they've asked the women, do you like these gym selfies or not? And a lot of women, I see this a lot on TikTok as well, a lot of women coming out saying, why are you guys posting all these gym selfies? No one cares but you, things like that. But then when you look at an anonymous survey of what the women are attracted to, and it's muscular physique, arms, short shoulders, V-cut, big back, things you can't fake, like you have to have built it.
That's interesting though, isn't it? That's interesting when we were talking earlier on about how dating's changed in terms of perception, social media, creepiness, things like this. But from a perspective of, I think we're now in a world where what people want and what people want to say they want is a bigger gap than ever before. Before, no one had any shame saying, I like men or women that look like this, and this, or behave like this, and this. Whereas now it's sort of like, I want a man with abs, but I'm going to be judged if I say I want a man with abs. So I want to, do I want a skinny woman? Oh, well, you're against fat people. I'm like, no. If you say you prefer someone of a certain race, you've been racist. No, my natural urges are towards a certain race. Exactly. So I think now that makes it harder as well, because if some of these men are looking at what they see online is what people want, they're not actually what people want.
Yeah. And again, it also comes back to, do you actually know what you want? Or have you been taught to want what you want? The stereotypical 90s Pamela Anderson, bleach blonde, big boobs, tiny little physique, which really, realistically, if you look at all what you would consider the most beautiful women in history, Pamela Anderson's not even close, man. Not even close. But what was pushed hard in Baywatch, I much more preferred Yasmin Bleeth. Way more fancied Yasmin Bleeth.
As to Chandler Bing.
Which we know do not be like Chandler Bing if you want a successful dating life and relationship. So it's a case of what is being pushed as well. Now, okay, so why did Pamela Anderson get so big? Well, she was a porn star. She was doing topless photos before she was even in Baywatch. She was doing topless photos before she had the surgery as well. Like that's why there was a large percentage of guys that knew her from Playboy and what other magazines they had back then, way before the era of the internet porn. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that a female could still get that big in the public eye before any sort of internet porn whatsoever. Mad when you think about it.
What do you think makes the perfect dating profile?
So I'm gonna try and give my opinion on this rather than the stuff I've read, because that Logan Urie's book I thought was phenomenal. If anyone's interested in the dating market or how to not die alone, get that book. It's so well put, and it's coming from a place of someone who's done the research, done the studies on it. I thought it was fascinating. So I'm going to try not to just regurgitate what other people are saying and talk about what I would look for in that dating profile. And the girls I looked for were ones that were not all photos out in clubs, like as if their social life is their only part to their personality. Cool to show photos with friends, but I want to make sure I can pick you out in that photo. Yes. It's always risky doing photos with friends because technically you might have a friend that is slightly more physically attractive than you, in which case the guys
will do that.
It's risky, man. It's the same for the guys as well. Same for the guys. It's risky doing too many group photos. So you want to do that to show that you've got some sort of social life. And if it's nothing but mirror selfies or just selfies, then I know maybe there's not much going on there. Like it's not that hard to go out with friends or to go somewhere and have a few photos taken of you or have a few natural photos of experiences or something like that. If it was clearly just a profile that's been set up for a dating profile that's been done right there and then I don't know, maybe there's not much else going on behind the scenes. I don't know. Those were the ones that kind of put me off. I think too overly sexual for me. It was coming across a bit trashy, a bit too desperate, trying a bit too hard. But when they just kind of looked like nice girls, like someone you'd want to sit and talk to, like if you worked with her, you'd want to be friends with her, not necessarily date her. You'd want to be friends with her because she looks like a nice person. She's coming across nice. But man, you would see. I would dread to be on them right now because I reckon it's even worse than last year. The pictures are one thing, but what people would write in the profiles were so bad. So I want to read about you. I want to learn about you. What little flags that you're waving should I pick up on that we might have in common that make you a more intriguing person that I might want to talk to you? You would scroll through a large percentage of profiles where they're just listing the things they don't want. No guys under 5'10". Why 5'10"? I don't know. No guys under 5'10". No guys still living with their mum. No guys with tattoos. No mirror selfies. If you go to the gym all the time, I'm not interested. And they're just creating these barriers to finding someone who could actually be the great guy for them.
And you assume that like, aren't they a delight? They first look at the negatives in someone, they're not looking at the positives.
They're stuck up. And you would scroll through going, why? Like you become kind of bitter and resentful. You look at them and go, who are you to put these standards on? You're a 2, like go away. And that's what will happen with a lot of guys. Like that could have been the perfect match for a certain guy, but he's reading that stuff going, cool, what a bitch. Scroll, that's one woman he's not going to match with now. So
do you think it's the same the other way around for guys dating profiles?
It's females swipe a hell of a lot less. I think it was like 16%. Females will swipe, I forget which one. Will positively try to match with a guy. It's like 16% of women will do. Women will do that on 16% of profiles.
Girls are fussy as well. Girls find it harder to be with someone they don't find attractive, whereas guys don't care as much.
Yeah. There's multiple reasons behind that as well. There will be females are less likely to make the first move. And okay, granted, if you don't swipe, you don't match, no move is made at all. But some women are still stuck in there. And it all depends how that guy set up that profile. Is he coming across attractive and endearing enough? Is he coming across creepy? And oh my God, I kind of wish I was on the app now because Hinge added voice notes. And I've had some girls send me what guys would send on their voice notes. Oh, it was incredible. Pandora's box shouldn't have been opened. Do not put voice notes as an option on your dating profile. But no, you did it. Too late. Too late. You've given morons, creeps, and retards a reason to leave a voice note. Terrible. The things they were getting sent was just amazing.
Oh my
There's TikTok channels devoted to it, devoted to finding these guys' profiles and playing their voice note. Oh my God, it's hilarious. But yeah, the females would be less likely to make that first move, so they're less likely to swipe, they're less likely to match, they're less likely to send a message as well. And there's a lot of matches that are being made and messages not being sent from either the guy or the girl, which defeats the object of matching, really. Doesn't really help your algorithm as such. You've got to talk. That's what helps your algorithm. Well, so it helps your dating. That's the reason you're on there. So there's a lot of elements to why women aren't swiping that way. But yes, even though they might be less likely to admit it, they do base a lot of their first impressions on attractiveness because that's the first thing you see. That's the absolute first thing you see. One of the fairest things to do which wouldn't ever work, because the same principles would still happen, would be to create a dating app where you write a profile all about yourself with no pictures. You write about your financial status, your health, you do a full spectrum health test, all these things, your hobbies, your friends, your life story, everything, but no pictures. But the same thing would happen. They'd be more attracted to the higher status guys based on what that status is. And then you add a photo to the mix, or they meet for the first time. If they're not attracted, they're not going to be attractive. You can't change that. Can't change that. Okay, obviously by the end of the date, depending in how you connect, fortunately, and attractiveness is one of those first things that we look at. And on a dating app, a picture, which could be manipulated, edited, filtered, perfect angle. Picture could have been taken 25 times before they chose the perfect one to put up there. It's not an accurate representation of that person. It's not.
So where do you think, because I appreciate that you've got to get off by 1 o'clock and I want to go through one core topic. What, where do you think people should go for dating advice now? Is the game still relevant?
No. Neil Strauss is a fraud. What he wrote in that book is now no longer what he does himself.
He wrote a counter book, though, didn't he?
And a counter book as well. Doesn't even believe in it himself. So you can then go look at guys who were around that time, the people who reference in the book, like the mystery method. Go Google mystery, see what mystery looks like now. Completely different guy. Not the type of guy that most women would be attracted to now either. So it all kind of changed. I think it massively changed when everything went online rather than people chatting in the flesh, and partly with the Me Too movement as well. So where do you go to for dating advice? This is the problem. Who has the most stable, solid relationship might not be very good at explaining how to date to create that relationship. Someone who's great at dating might not be able to create a relationship beyond that, in which case neither of those people are going to serve you if you're looking to date to find a decent relationship. If you're just looking to date to ratchet number up and things like that, it's not that hard, really. It's really not. But again, you have to be a better version of yourself. So in terms of dating advice, just find your nutrition and your training gurus first. Do things that are going to help you increase in confidence. Do not buy James Smith's book on confidence. You can do better than that. Do things that are going to increase your confidence. Do things that are going to help you become more a grounded individual and maybe have a bit more of a financial backing or more stability. That's your dating advice, really. Because again, it has to be about you. All dating advice is, you can go down the game type spectrum. This is how you talk to a woman. You say this sentence and you do this movement. Then you put this eyebrow up, and you move her here. You have to take it at 7 different venues in one night if you want to sleep with her. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got, you just need to be a nice guy, need to be polite, need to smile. And in a way, you have to be a bit of two. You don't necessarily need a script or a program to try and manipulate a woman into bed, but you need to be able to hold a conversation and keep things interesting and put a few pattern breaks in there and potentially sexually escalate, that sort of thing. But you also need to be a decent fucking human being. You can't just come in and be a complete arsehole. It only works for a very small percentage of men. So I don't think there is good things. Even though this book I've referenced a couple of times now is a phenomenal book, but it's very, very straight in terms of lower your expectations a little bit. Because if you're putting too many filters on your dating profile of what you're looking for, you are instantly creating a smaller pool for you to choose from, which you have to play a numbers game. You have to play the numbers game, and you have to go on multiple dates. And if you go on a date, just because it's a date, doesn't mean that that's the person you have to try and then spend the rest of your life with. It's okay to date multiple people whilst you're trying to figure out what you actually like and who you are. There you go. Who'd you come to dating advice? You come to me. Come to me. I'm starting a new Instagram channel, Rob Core Dating. Come see me. I'll sort your shit out. But it's a culmination of everything. Who do you go to for training and nutrition advice? Well, you're not going to go to one person. You're going to go to one person and take what is relevant to you from that person. And then you can do that with another person until you build your arsenal up and you know how to train properly and eat properly and things like that. And I think it's the same with dating. You can listen to a little bit of the game, red pill guys. You can listen to a little bit of the nicer. You can listen to female dating coaches as well as you can listen to male coaches.
Kezia Noble.
Yeah. Kezia Noble.
She's come back to fold a little bit more recently again.
Yeah, very popular again. Very popular again now. And there's so many out there. So it's a case of, again, listening to a lot. Don't get sold into the guru mindset and just listen to every single thing they're saying, because again, it's just one person and no person's perfect. Take what's relevant to you from it and build up a toolbox, same as you would in any other endeavor. Yeah,
I
can.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also find that ability to have conversations, sexually escalate, all this stuff is easier to do once you're confident in yourself, and harder to do when you're not confident in yourself. And
Exactly.
you hit the nail on the head that somebody's you might admire for being in a relationship, it's not good dating advice. I've had lots of my friends tell me they admire my relationship, but I would never ever want them to come to me for dating advice. Like I got incredibly lucky with the girl I've had, and I could give you advice potentially of how to keep that going. But getting there, I am the worst person in the world, I think, from my track record. But to close off on that a little, why do you think relationships, marriages fail, and why do you think long-term relationships last?
It's where your focus and your attention is. That's what it is. It's where your focus and your attention is. I want to go back to that boat analogy you said. The two boats going together, that is perfect. And let's say they're part of the same fleet, they're on the same mission. There might be moments where they have to change trajectory a little bit or change course a little bit, or one does one thing, one does another, as long as it's all part of getting to the end mission. But if you've got two boats that are just coasting along and one just turns 1 degree, you're not going to notice that split at first. You're not going to notice it for a while. But over a long period of time, that boat's in a completely different place. You have to work together. You have to communicate. People aren't communicating anymore. Too distracted by bullshit. Whether it's our own bullshit going on in our head, whether it's the news, whether it's the me, people are arguing over how we should feel about the Queen's death. Are they saying "I love you" to their partner when they go to bed that night? A large percentage won't be. They're putting more. They'll be lying in bed going, "I said this to this person on Facebook, and they didn't respond, which means I win." And stupid stuff. People aren't communicating. People aren't focusing or putting their attention on building a better relationship, because a relationship has to be built, it has to be fine-tuned, it has to be spoken about, worries have to be communicated and worked on, and you have to do things that show you appreciate each other, and you have to keep fun in there, and you have to work at a sex life. It sounds like a lot of fucking work, but that's the whole point of doing it, isn't it? Same as building a body, same as building a business. The best one you could possibly build takes effort, takes work. You can't just coast and try and let things happen. Otherwise, those two boats end up in very different positions. So I think that's what the case is. Our divorce rate is higher than ever because we have more distractions and more stress than ever.
Yeah. I think for me, this is going to sound bad, but I think trust is really huge, and setting expectations in trust and boundaries in trust early is really important. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people have relationships where their partners don't trust them, they're suspicious of stuff. And I remember a time early in a relationship where I was a girl from uni texted me, no romantic at all, just a friend. And I remember going to the loo, came back down, and Ellie was looking at my text messages, and I called on it, and I was like, don't ever do that again. And I don't want to sound like I'm harsh, but it's like, this has to be built up on trust. And now we're in a position where if I go out with a group of mates and a few of them are female, there is no judgment. One of the things I'm really thankful about my relationship, if I go out, I've never ever get in trouble. Oh, you should be back in with me tonight, or you should be doing this, as long as I miss important events. Or she goes out until 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm not calling her at 10 o'clock going, where are you? Understanding and appreciate that while we're in a relationship, we are not a combined unit. She can have her life, and I am not, in no way do I have any say what she does with her life, and vice versa. We are running our own lives, and we support each other like those two ships. But I don't tell the second ship how he talks to his staff, what engine he uses. We go into the same direction, we get the same thing. I don't mind. Yeah, and I think that's huge, because I see it all the time where people don't like the fact there are girls in the background, and that stuff just makes me feel very sad. And I think those people should run a mile. And I think I'm very grateful that I don't have to, vice versa, deal with that, nor do I worry about that. I think that's one of the biggest things. And I think the appreciation thing is huge. I don't think I go a day without. I hope that Ellie agrees with me here. I don't think I go a day without making it very, 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 very known how much I appreciate this relationship. And it's amazing how I see people don't do it.
Yeah, and it's so simple. You have to be your two individuals complementing each other through a relationship. The relationship cannot become your identity, because then what happens when it goes? That's when people experience a huge loss of identity, and that's where things can get really, really bad. You have to remain an individual.
I think it's another reason why relationships end as well, because people lose their identity and they're not the person that person fell in love with anymore, because they stop looking after themselves.
Yes, 100%.
So to have a closing question, because I know you've got to shoot off, is dating harder or easier? Following on from last week, is dating harder or easier now you're almost 40 and entering silver fox territory?
Harder, so much harder, because of expectations. Because of the age range of the girl you might be dating, what her expectations for where she wanted to be at that point in her life, and what she's looking for a man at that point in his life. There's a lot more pressure. I'm not going to start looking for younger women. There's zero interest in that whatsoever. In terms of the online world and how it has skewed people's perceptions of what a relationship is and what their standards should be, I would 100% agree with anyone that says it is harder now. And in terms of coming into my 40s, I find more people find me attractive, but I'm looking after myself more than I ever did. I'm still not that best version of that person that I want to be. And I think that reflects on my dates as well. I think my frustrations and my worries show a bit too much, and I probably should let on, but I'm always going to be honest at the same time.
I will say one thing. One of the things that Ellie brought up in our first date that really hooked her in with me is that I opened up with my insecurities. I told her that I don't like my teeth, and that set me apart from everyone that's trying to put a bravado on. I own what I like and own what I don't like, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, apparently showing vulnerability on a first date is important, but people, especially guys, don't know how to show vulnerability. That means explaining, like you said, like an insecurity. It doesn't mean you sit there crying and being upset and talking about Disney and how Leo died in Titanic. It's like, don't be a pansy, but some sort of vulnerability, some sort of honesty. Obviously, that's a massive, massive green flag for most people, as long as it's not the main talk of your date.
Yeah. I also think as well, I suppose, that you saying that you're not the man you want to be yet, if you got to the man you want to be, would you actually lose the level of attractiveness? Because the pursuit of being better, the pursuit of, I want to learn more about this, this, and this. I'm going to learn more about dating. I'm going to learn more about aliens. I'm going to learn more about the gym. I'm going to learn more about this. It makes you more interesting.
100%. And I think that's an attractive quality in it. Someone that is pursuing, I'm saying someone that just wants to completely focus on their career and become a millionaire right now. Someone who does have hobbies and interests and wants more about them and wants to upgrade potential skills and hobbies that they've got already. And what's kind of funny is two of my biggest securities were, okay, I talk about UFOs a lot. I look at stuff related to UFOs a lot. No one actually cared. I don't think it actually put anyone off when I mentioned that. And my biggest insecurity was I was entering the dating market after a divorce. That was terrifying, bringing that up in conversation. No one gave a fuck. No one ever gave a fuck. So I think it's okay to show these vulnerabilities and share maybe an insecurity or something, as long as it doesn't become the main conversation point of the entire date.
There's a difference between you going through a divorce and showing that you're open to longer term relationships with people who are in their 30s, as opposed to you making it sound like you really miss your ex and I might as well get back on the horse.
Yeah, or entirely bitter or anything. And some girls flagged up an insecurity that they didn't want to be a rebound from a divorce. And that's fucking fine as well. That's fine. And that's an attractive quality, being able to flag that insecurity up as well. Shows they're human and they are vulnerable. And
100%.
Yeah,
well, I'll let you to get on with your day, man. Thank you for this again. Really, really good. And I'll speak to you next week.
Come on, my man. See you soon.
Guys, thank you very much for watching the podcast. If you're like me and like to binge watch podcast episodes, click here for our most recent episode. And if you enjoy the show and want to be updated when new videos come live, click here to subscribe to the channel.